Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Book Club Picks Online and in Person. Oh, remember in person? I'm Susan Maguire, Senior Editor for Collection Management and Library Outreach. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides were sent directly to you from Zoom at the start of the webinar, but you can also download them at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and video recording. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from an all-star cast: Laura Keefe, Director of Marketing and Publicity at Bloomsbury; Virginia Stanley, Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins; Amanda Roundtree, Assistant Digital Media Manager at Macmillan Library; and Chelsea Good, Associate Manager of Library Marketing at Penguin Random House. First, let's hear from Laura Keefe. Laura is the Director of Marketing and Publicity at Bloomsbury. She's also currently mom, chef, teacher, housekeeper to a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old at home in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thank you for being here, Laura.
Hi, thank you for having me. Apologize in advance if you hear that cute baby from the picture talking in the background. Like Susan said, I am the Senior Director of Marketing and Publicity at Bloomsbury. My email is there on the screen. Please feel free to follow up with me directly about anything that you would like. After the webinar here, I hope that I have something that you are interested in today. So to start off with, I have a couple of very relevant titles. These are backlist titles, and if you have book clubs looking for recommendations in the anti-racist reading space right now, these are two very strong ones that you can be recommending to them. White Rage by Carol Anderson is currently back on the New York Times bestseller list due to a great many recommendations for it by people ranging from author Robin DiAngelo to Good Morning America. Dr. Anderson is chair of the African American History Department at Emory University, and she coined the phrase white rage after the riots in Missouri a couple of years ago. In this book, Anderson expertly and clearly outlines how Black political and social progress in America, starting from the end of the Civil War, has been systematically opposed and undone by laws and politicians, white politicians. It is a clear, damning, and essential aspect of American history that will really change the way that you think. We have a reading group, a discussion guide available for this. I actually think it's in the paperback edition of the book, but it's online also if you have book clubs that want it. And the next book here on this slide is Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. Jesmyn has now won 2 National Book Awards for her fiction, and this book is her memoir. It is written as beautifully and tragically as only Jesmyn Ward can write. By the time Jesmyn was 25 years old, she had lost 4 men close to her, including her beloved brother. And while the causes of their deaths range from drugs to accidents to suicide, the underlying reason for their early passing was because they were young Black men in the American South. It's a fascinating exploration of growing up Black and poor in the rural American South, and it is a devastating read, one that feels especially essential as we struggle to understand why Black people and Black men in particular continue to be killed and die at very young ages. So that's it for those 2 selections. And my next slide is Mary Pfeiffer, Women Rowing North. This book is out in paperback now. It was a New York Times bestseller from the author of Reviving Ophelia. It is a guide to wisdom, authenticity, and bliss for women as they age. It has a new foreword by the author in the paperback, and a discussion guide is also available. Women growing older contend with ageism, misogyny, and loss, and yet, as Mary Pfeiffer shows in Women Rowing North, Most older women are deeply happy and filled with gratitude for the gifts of life. Their struggles help them grow into the authentic, empathetic, and wise people they have always wanted to be. In Women Rowing North, Pfeiffer offers an examination of the cultural and developmental issues that women face as they age. She draws on her own experience as daughter, sister, mother, grandmother, caregiver, clinical psychologist, and cultural anthropologist, and she explores ways women can cultivate resilience in response to the challenges they face. It's a fantastic read. There's a ton to dig into here. My mom did it with her book club, and she absolutely loved it. So strongly recommend Mary Pfeiffer here. Next, No Visible Bruises by Rachel Louise Snyder. The subtitle, as you can see here, is What We Don't Know About Domestic Violence Can Kill Us. This book is also just now available in paperback this summer. This is another book that has really changed the way I think about so many things. Rachel Louise Snyder is a finalist and a winner of so many prizes for this book. She also writes for the New Yorker magazine. She was an LA Times Book Prize finalist for this. She won a lot of work in progress prizes as well. And it feels like it should really be required reading for everyone in America. It is a New Yorker writer's investigation of the true scope of domestic violence, revealing how the roots of America's most pressing social crises are buried in the abuse that happens at home behind closed doors. The World Health Organization has deemed domestic violence a global epidemic, and in America, it accounts for 15% of all violent crime, and yet it remains locked in silence, even as the effects of domestic violence reach unseen into so many pressing national issues, from our economy to our education system and mass shootings to mass incarceration to the Me Too movement. We've still not really taken the true measure of this problem, but No Visible Bruises gives us context for what we don't know we're seeing. It's framed around key stories that explode a lot of common myths, and it talks to victims and perpetrators and law enforcement and people leading reform movements around the country. It's really important. It feels like a real game changer. So again, nonfiction book clubs can find a lot to dig into here. Next slide. The Heart and Other Monsters, a memoir by Rose Anderson. This just went on sale July 7th. It is a riveting, deeply personal exploration of the opioid crisis, and it is a memoir infused with hints of true crime. After a dysfunctional childhood, Sarah, Rose Anderson's beloved sister, who was an addict, is found dead from an overdose at age 24. Anderson scours the coroner's report and court transcripts and delves into evidence that suggests that Sarah's lethal dose was not accidental, but rather administered by a man who thought she knew too much about a heinous crime he had committed. This is a tragic tale of addiction, and it will resonate very deeply with readers like The Red Parts, The Fact of a Body, and I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Anderson makes an unexpected discovery that really leads this memoir down a twisting and fascinating path. Next slide. Another memoir, this one coming September 22nd of this year. Excellent recommendation for people who liked Educated and The Glass Castle. This is a harrowing, redemptive, and inspiring memoir of childhood trauma and its long reach into adulthood. It's gorgeously written. A little bit of plot summary. On one Omaha day in November 1978, the author Deborah Harding was 14. She was abducted from a church parking lot, thrown into a van, assaulted, held for ransom, and then left to die as an ice storm descended over the city. Deborah survived. She identified her attacker to the police and returned to her teenage life in a very dysfunctional home where she was expected to simply move on. Very 70s from all the other true crime documentaries I watch. It wasn't until decades later that Deborah undertook a radical project. She met her childhood attacker face-to-face in prison, began to reconsider and reimagine his complex story from different angles. It sounds very heavy, but Deborah applies a light touch, and she has some irreverence, astonishing prose, and really remarkable originality. Next slide. So I'll move into some fiction here now. In West Mills, this is a debut novel, this is now in paperback, about a woman who will do her own thing, consequences be damned, in a tight-knit African-American community in North Carolina, set from the 1950s through the 1980s. It's an excellent recommendation for anyone looking for own voices, storytelling, and Black joy. There is so much joy in this book. You've never met a character like Not, who is our main character here. She loves liquor, reading 19th century fiction, especially Charles Dickens, men, and not being told what to do by anyone. West Mills, where it's set as a very tight-knit community, these people are all involved in one another's business, and there are no secrets, regardless of how people try to keep them, It has been a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize. It won the Center for Fiction Debut Novel Award and is really wonderful. Next slide. This is Happiness. This is a profound and enchanting Irish novel from Booker Prize longlisted author Niall Williams about the loves of our lives and the joys of reminiscing. It's classic Irish fiction. It's really beautiful. It's really fun. It's been a very steady seller for us. People keep coming to it just because of its sort of gorgeous small town portrait. Next slide. Light from Other Stars by Erica Swyler. Erica is the best-selling author of the Book of Speculation. This just came out in paperback in May. It follows an 11-year-old girl in 1986 in a Florida Space Coast town who is obsessed with becoming an astronaut. And she thinks she can make it if only she would grow up fast enough. And her father, Theo, is a scientist, and he fears his girl growing up too fast and leaving him, so he invents a machine that actually alters the fabric of time. And from there, it sort of takes a bit of a science fiction twist, but it's a beautiful story about fathers and daughters, about time, about family, and about being close to the people that we love. People who liked The Age of Miracles or The Immortalists would also really like this book. Next slide. Artifact by Arlene Hayman. This just went on sale July 7th. It is a debut novel from practicing psychiatrist Arlene Hayman. The best thing about Arlene is that she is 78 years old, and this is her debut novel, and it reads like she's been writing books her entire life. It is a dazzling half-century spanning novel of a biologist who was born in 1940s in Michigan. She loves life, she loves science, she's fascinated by the human body, she's very sex positive, and it sort of follows Lottie through the trials and tribulations and joys and successes of her life, from a young marriage and motherhood to the 60s anti-war movement to her pursuit of a career in science at a time when that was especially difficult for women. This novel has a little bit of everything. Next up, The Vanishing Sky. This just went on sale last week. This is a sweeping World War II historical novel, like All the Light We Cannot See and Warlight and The Invisible Bridge. It's set in 1945 as the war in Germany nears its end. Edda, a mother from a small town, has two sons. The eldest is on the Eastern Front and her younger is at a school for Hitler Youth. The eldest returns from the front, and his mother quickly realizes something isn't right. He's been very traumatized by the war. He's mentally ill as a result of his trauma, and she has to protect him from the Nazi rule, who will take him away from her if they know he is sick. And her younger son has deserted his class of battle-bound teenage soldiers to set off on a long journey home through wartime Germany, sort of echoes of Cold Mountain there. It was actually inspired by the experiences of Annette's family in World War II, and it reckons very honestly with a very fraught family history and tells a really gripping story at the same time. Next, and finally, Outlawed by Anna North. This is coming out in January 21. Please ask me for a galley or download it from Edelweiss or NetGalley. This is, we're pitching this as The Crucible meets True Grit. It is a riveting adventure story of a fugitive girl, a mysterious gang of robbers, and their dangerous mission to transform the Wild West. It starts off with a great first line. In the year of our Lord, 1894, I became an outlaw. It's set in 1894 in a United States that has actually ceased to exist. It's not the United States anymore. There was a massive flu epidemic that broke the country up into sort of loosely organized territories right at the end, just after the Civil War. On the day of her wedding, our heroine, who is like a really, gritty, intuitive person, Ada, she's 17 and her life looks good. She loves her husband. She loves working as an apprentice to her mother, a respected midwife. But after a year of marriage and no pregnancy in a town where barren women are routinely hanged as witches, her survival depends on leaving everything behind. Ada joins up with the notorious Hole in the Wall gang, a band of outlaws led by a preacher turned robber who is gender non-binary, known to all as the Kid. Charismatic, grandiose, and mercurial, the Kid is determined to create a safe haven for outcast women. But to make this dream a reality, the gang hatches a treacherous plan that may get them all killed. And Ada must decide whether she is willing to risk her life for the possibility of a new kind of future for them all. It sort of dusts off the myth of the Old West and reignites the glimmering promise of the frontier with an entirely new set of feminist stakes. The author really has crafted a pulse-racing, page-turning saga about the search for hope in the wake of death and for truth in a climate of small-mindedness and fear. And that wraps it up for me. So I hope that was interesting to you. Please email me if you would like to see anything in person. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Next, we're going to hear from Virginia Stanley. Virginia is the Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins. Born and raised on Long Island, she started her publishing career at Doubleday in 1984, then moved on to HarperCollins. She loves a good coming-of-age story and a twisty psychological thriller. Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little remain her creature comforts. Take it away, Virginia.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening in today. Can you hear me okay? Hope so. Yes, I'm going to Zoom, yes. Okay, so I have a lot of books to get to, so let's just go to it. Next slide, please. Our book club online catalog is available if you go to Library Love Fest. Find out all the latest and greatest there. Next, please. Something we recently announced that audiobooks are now available for select titles on Edelweiss and NetGalley. So this is pretty cool, and we're really excited about this. So do check that out. Next. Door to door. This is the last bit of housekeeping I'll do before I get to the titles, but every week, the Library Love Fest team is talking about books or interviewing authors. We're almost up to 40 authors now, so we invite you to join us. And if you go to the next slide, this is just a sampling of some of the books that authors we've interviewed. Today, Meg Cabot is on, being interviewed by Lainey Mays, and this Thursday we'll be talking with Sophie Hannah at 4 o'clock. Not to worry, if you can't join us, all of the episodes are available on Facebook and also on YouTube on the Library Love Fest channel. So I do hope you can join us for the Sophie Hannah this Thursday at 4 o'clock. Okay, next. First book I want to tell you about is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is Rear Window meets Get Out. It's a gripping thriller about this by Alyssa Cole, and it's about the gentrification of a Brooklyn neighborhood that takes on a new sinister meaning. So Sydney Green, she's born and raised in Brooklyn, but condos are sprouting all over the place. For sale signs are everywhere. And her neighbors she's known all her life are disappearing. She assumes that they're just sort of leaving the neighborhood, and she's frustrated by this. And she channels her frustration into a walking tour, and she finds this unlikely and unwanted person, this assistant, and he's a new arrival to the block. It's her neighbor, but they deep dive into a history that quickly becomes a dizzying descent into paranoia and fear. Their neighbors may not have moved to the suburbs after all, and the push to revitalize the community may be more deadly than advertised. So what does coincidence become conspiracy? And where do people go when gentrification pushes them out? This got a starred Booklist review, starred PW review. Alifair Burke says, I was knocked over by the momentum of an intense psychological thriller that doesn't let go until the final page. This is a terrific read. Alyssa Cole is one of the leading voices championing diverse and inclusive fiction. If you go to the Edelweiss page, there's a terrific behind the book piece written by her about why she wrote the book. Next slide. Monogamy by Sue Miller. You may have heard me talk about this for forever because I love it so much. This is a terrific story by Sue Miller about two people who have been married for 30 years. When they're very different. He's a gregarious bookstore owner. She's a little more sort of reserved. They have this wonderful life. He dies unexpectedly. And as Annie is trying to put the pieces of her life together and she's grieving, she's going through things, and she finds out that he was having an affair. This is book club fodder. My God, I love this book so much. It's just about families and secrets and marriage and infidelity, and I just absolutely love it. Starred reviews and Booklist and PW. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we're reissuing all of her backlist and newly recorded audiobooks. She's just wonderful. Again, another wonderful behind the book piece on Edelweiss. Go read it. You'll love it. I love this book. Next, please. Next, please. Cookbook Club by Beth Harbison. Who doesn't love butter? And who doesn't love a good book about books and cooking and yummy recipes. The backstory here is that Margot Everson has been dumped by her self-absorbed husband. That's not much of a loss. He wasn't so great to begin with. But he leaves her a dilapidated old farmhouse and a collection of well-loved books. So she seeks out the call for the book club that she's got, the cookbook club that she's going to, sort of put her life back together. And she's found her people. She finds Trista, this DC lawyer with a chic house in Bethesda, and another woman, Asia, who's a yoga teacher from Rockville. And they form this friendship, but they definitely have some, I don't know, they have a few things that they're hiding behind the facade of fabulous. They bond, but it's not always so wonderful. And this is their story. Another great behind the book piece on Edelweiss by the author, who includes cooking tips and do's and don'ts. The author graduated, she worked full-time as a private chef in the DC area and then sold her first cookbook 3 years after that. It's really wonderful and very fun and very engaging and perfect for book clubs. Next. Do Not Disturb by Claire Douglas. This is a thrilling novel about a guest house and family secrets. So there's a traumatic event that happens in London, and Kirsty Woodhouse packs up her family and moves back to her native Wales, where she sets up a new home with her husband and her kids and goes into business with her mother, managing as guest house. When the guest house is finally ready to be occupied, Kirsty encounters the last person she'd ever expect to see, her estranged cousin, Selena. They haven't seen each other in 17 years, and it did not end well. Why is she back in her life? What does she want from her? She becomes increasingly concerned for the safety of her daughters. Her dream home begins to feel like her worst nightmare, and she knows that once you invite trouble into your home, it can be murder getting rid of it. Oh, yeah. The Penguin UK edition of this was a Sunday Times bestseller, and Claire Douglas's previous books were all Sunday Times bestsellers. She's a terrific writer. Next. Okay, Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellaflor. This is a trade paperback original. Some of you may have met her when she was in the Public Library Association conference in Nashville, which feels like 17 years ago. This is a nod to Bridget Jones and Pride and Prejudice. It's a charming Own Voices queer holiday rom-com debut. This is after a disastrous blind date, Darcy Lowell is desperate to stop her well-meaning brother from playing matchmaker ever again. Love and the inevitable heartbreak is the last thing she wants, so she fibs and she says her last setup was great. Don't fix me up anymore. But Elle Jones, one of the astrologers behind the popular Twitter account, Oh My Stars, she dreams of finding her soulmate. She most assuredly knows but she knows it most assuredly not Darcy. This is just a very fun and very twisty and sexy book that I think a lot of people are going to really come to. It's Jane Austen retelling, and it was well received at PLA, I will say that. It features 2 queer, 1 lesbian, 1 bisexual heroine, and it's an Own Voices book, and I just love it. Next. Transatlantic Book Club, Felicity McCoy. I'm sure you all know the Transatlantic Book Club was started with The Library at the Edge of the World, the Finfarron Peninsula series, which was a Library Reads pick. And here she is again. This is another episode in this wonderful series about this Lisburg Library in Ireland. They set up a book club, the Skype book club, linking readers on Ireland's Finfarron Peninsula with this little known town of Resolve, where generations of Finfarron's immigrants have settled. So this is the story of how conflicts on both sides of the ocean are exposed and hidden love affairs come to light, and it's super fun. As I say, Library at the Edge of the World was the #4 Library Reads pick when it first came out. This has huge book club potential. It's great themes, family, relationships, home, and it's a perfect book club book because it's about book clubs. And readers will discover the Lisburg Library Book Club, which works as a running joke because they never manage to discuss the book that they're supposed to be reading. It's hilarious. There's also a great sense of Ireland there. Wonderful book. Next, I have so many books, so little time. Lady Brewer of London by Karen Brooks. So this is set in 1405, and it's the daughter of a wealthy merchant, Annika Sheldrake, and she finds herself bankrupt when her father's ship is swept away at sea. She's forced to provide for her family, and so she turns to her late mother's family's business, brewing ale. She's armed with her mother's recipes. Her brews begin to win these awards, and she follows and begins to turn a profit. But her rise threatens some in her community, and those closest to her are left to pay a price. She slowly starts to put her life together again. She finds an unlikely ally in a London brothel owner. So much fun. Lavishly detailed, full of twists and turns. It's great for book clubs. And you get a fascinating look into how beer and ale ruled the world in the 15th century. Next. Flip side, a rom-com. James Bailey was a part of a small group of men writing romance. His writing is tender, his writing is funny, and it's sure to be a hit with men and women. I don't even need to go into the subject of the book. You know what it is. It's super fun rom-com. I love the part that that the author is male and this is becoming a rising thing. Next. Leave the World Behind by Ruan Alam. This is set in the Hamptons, where a white middle-class family is renting a vacation home. And the book turns quickly, if quite quietly ominous, when the TV, phones, and the internet go out. But the power and the vacation continue. And in the middle of the night, the wealthy Black owners of the house show up asking if they can stay. Something is happening outside, and no one knows what it is. So you meet Amanda and Clay. They're having this wonderful vacation out on Long Island. They are a white couple. The owners of the house knock on the door. Something's going on. No one knows what it is. This is straight up doling out senses of confusion, mystery, and dread in a way that pulls the reader along. Everyone is desperate for information, but it's in short supply. This is such a great book. The book's insight about parenthood, marriage, race, and class are ripe for group discussion. Timely social issues are all wrapped up in a story that feels very fresh and highly readable. And if you go to librarylovefest.com, there's a terrific interview with Chris Connolly and Ruan Alam. It's a wonderful book. I probably will not get to all of these books, so we'll go as fast as we can. Next, please. These Violent Delights by Micah Neberever. This is The Secret History Meets a Little Life. It's a compulsively readable story about two college students. Each has his own troubled past. They're obsessed with each other, and it leads to an unspeakable act of violence. This is an omagazine.com LGBTQ book. This has just got great reviews, raves all over the place. Highly, highly recommend it. Next. This is The New Wilderness by Diane Cook. Okay, listen up. This book is getting all the love in the world. This is longlisted for the Booker Prize. This is starred reviews all over the place. Roxanne Gate just wrote on Twitter, 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, it is, first of all, she's the author of Man vs. Nature, which was this brilliant story collection, which was a finalist for 1 million awards. This is her debut novel. It speaks to our time and to important questions that trouble us about the environment and how we live in the world. It's centered around a mother-daughter relationship, which is the core of the book. This woman's 5-year-old daughter is slowly wasting away. The smog and the pollution of the city, an overpopulated, overbuilt metropolis where most of the population lives, is destroying her lungs. They leave the city and they go to the wilderness state. It's the last swath of open, unprotected land where forests and desert plains are inhabited solely by wildlife, and people are forbidden until now. I could go on about this book. I don't have all the time in the world. I wish that I did. But I can say Lisa Lucas, executive director of the National Book Foundation, said, can we take a moment and talk about Diane Cook? She is brilliant, and the arrival of this book made me scream. So pumped. It's brilliant, it's smart, and Kirkus starred review says this ecological horror story, particularly horrifying now, explores painful regions of the human heart. Can't say enough about it, don't have enough time. 2 minutes left, I have to go on. Oh, The Forgotten Daughter by Joanna Goodman. This is a story about two women divided by their past, but united by love. If you read Home for the Unwanted Girls, which was a huge bestseller, you will know all about the way she can capture historical fiction. This is 1992. French-Canadian factions renew Quebec's fight to gain independence. And we meet this woman who is the daughter of a radical separatist convicted of kidnapping and murdering a prominent politician in 1970. She falls for a journalist of French-Canadian heritage who opposes Quebec's separatism. His older sister is one of the orphans from Home for Unwanted Girls, and is involved in a coalition demanding justice and reparations for their suffering in the 1950s in that orphanage. again, there's a great behind the book piece on Edelweiss, Joanna Goodman's inspiration for The Forgotten Daughters. The idea for the story was inspired by her own life experience growing up half English, half French in Montreal in the 90s, which was a very divisive time in Quebec. And my last slide, next please. Can't miss historical fiction. We have the brothers, oh, I'm sorry. So we have Instagram takeovers. I'm sorry, I'm not sure which going next. So these last two books, Brothers of Auschwitz and Sisters of War, they are what they are. They're almost self-explanatory, but I'm putting them here because they are such good book club books. Brothers of Auschwitz, Dav and Yitzhak live in a small village in the mountains of Hungary, isolated both from the world and the horrors of war. But in 1944, everything changes. The Nazis storm the homes of the Jewish villages and inform them they have 1 hour before the train will take them to Auschwitz. Six decades later, from the safety of their living rooms at home in Israel, the brothers finally break their silence to a friend who will never let their stories be forgotten. It's a paperback, includes a PS section, and Sisters of War, just as powerful. My time is gone. All my information is there. Thank you so much.
A whirlwind. That was a whirlwind. Thank you, Virginia. Our next presenter will be Amanda Roundtree. Amanda is the Assistant Digital Media Manager for Library Marketing. After saying farewell to our home state of Georgia and attending NYU Summer Publishing Institute, Amanda spent 4 years under the tutelage of the amazing Virginia Stanley at HarperCollins before joining Macmillan and eventually making her way back to her forever home in library marketing. A longtime lover of libraries, Amanda is excited to share her passion for all things fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and horror, but she'll read anything that comes with a good recommendation. Thank you for being here, Amanda.
Thank you, and hello, librarians. Like she said, I'm Amanda Roundtree with Macmillan Publishing, and I am so excited to be here today to tell you about a bunch of great books that'll get you talking. You can find us everywhere online. Our website is updated daily with all kinds of fun book news. Plus, I hope you'll follow us on social and sign up for our newsletter to stay in the know. You can also reach us at the email address on the screen right now. Next slide. If you'd like to download Macmillan eGalleys on Edelweiss, here's how. The instructions can also be found on our website. Next slide. And for those of you who participate in Library Reads, thank you so much. If you don't know about Library Reads, it's a monthly list of top 10 books voted on by you, public librarians. You can find more information about Library Reads and how to participate on our website. Next slide. So you have the book clubs, we have the authors. You can request to Skype with many of our authors, and this info can be found on our website as well. And with that, on to the books. Next slide. And I am starting us off with a whopper. The Four Winds by #1 New York Times bestselling and much beloved Kristen Hanna, author of The Nightingale and The Grey Alone. This new novel explores an epic and fascinating part of American history, the Dust Bowl of the Midwest in the 1930s, and the migration of many Americans to California through the story of one woman and the choices she makes in order to survive. Y'all, this author is made for book club discussions. Love and heroism and hope and courage and sacrifice. And with several movie deals and a Netflix series in the works, you know Kristen Hanna will be on everyone's radar. Next slide. We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. Move over, Scout Finch and Maddie Ross. There's a new badass young woman destined for the canon. She is the outlaw, 13-year-old Duchess Day Bradley, and you will remember her name. 30 years ago, when Vincent King was a teenager, he was sent to prison. He has served his time and is returning to his hometown. But that hometown is the same place where everything went wrong to begin with, where he murdered Duchess Day Bradley's aunt. When Duchess looks for answers and revenge, she not only threatens her own family, but everyone close to her. This is a literary mystery that really hits the sweet spot between clever plotting with deep characters that will stir all of the emotions. This debut is great for readers of Snow Falling on Cedars and Cold Mountain. Next slide. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. The #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Shades of Magic series is back with an epic and intimate novel spanning 3 centuries, telling the story of one girl. In a moment of desperation, Addie makes a deal with the devil to live as many lives as she can, and basically never die until she decides she's done living. But the catch, everyone she knows or meets will forget her as soon as she is out of their sight. But then one day she walks into a bookstore in present-day Manhattan and someone remembers her. Addie's tale is raw and full of emotion and will have you rooting for her the entire time. The E. Schwab's fans and fantasy readers will definitely automatically flock to this, but I think it'll also have a much wider appeal for historical fiction fans as we follow Addie throughout the years, or even any readers looking for a strong female lead, or any book clubs that loved Madeline Miller's Circe. It also already has 2-star reviews, so you know it's not one to be missed, and I really just want everyone to read it, no matter their genre preferences. Next slide. Jack by Marilyn Robinson, winner of the Pulitzer Prize and National Humanities Medal. With Jack, we return to the world of Gilead, Iowa. In segregated post-World War II St. Louis, Jack falls for Della Miles, an African-American high school teacher and preacher's daughter, and their relationship sums up the ongoing stresses of race relationships in post-emancipation America. Jack already has 3-star reviews, with PW saying, "This is a beautiful, superbly crafted meditation on the redemption and transcendence that love affords," with Kirkus chiming in with an elegantly written proof of the thesis that love conquers all, but not without considerable pain. And of course, Booklist saying, "Robinson holds us wrapped." Next slide. Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. Set in the very near future, when climate change has finally caused mass extinctions for many animals, we follow a woman who has tracked down what is believed to be the last flock of Arctic terns and decides to follow them on what may be their final migration from the Arctic all the way to Antarctica. She finagles her way onto a fishing vessel and convinces them to follow the flight path. And along the way, we slowly tease out her secrets and dark past to find out what she's really running from and towards. Absolutely gorgeous writing with an extremely timely subject, combined with a fierce and fragile narrator. This book will resonate on so many levels and be great for fans of Flight Behavior and Station 11. This is a story of relationships, a broken childhood, friendship, and heartbreak, and it is a stunning US debut with 2-star reviews. Next slide. What You Wish For by Catherine Sinter. From the beloved author of How to Walk Away and the Library Reads Pick Things You Save in a Fire comes the Kirkus star-reviewed What You Wish For. This is the story of a school librarian, Sam, with a conundrum. Her long-ago crush turns out to be the new school principal where she works, which is the best thing that could happen to the school, but the worst thing that could happen to Sam. What You Wish For is an Indie Next pick and a Library Reads pick, and it is the exact kind of uplifting read you need. Next slide. Luster by Raymond Leilani. This book has become something of a departmental favorite of ours. On a basic plot level, it's the story of a young Black woman who becomes tangled in the lives of her new older lover, his wife, and their adopted Black daughter, all while trying to understand her own family and herself and her art. What makes this debut so great is the sharp social commentary, the biting, beautiful, and poignant descriptions of being a woman, of being Black, of being young and struggling, and of being an artist in America. Everyone I know who's read this has found something that resonates, and it'll be great for fans of My Year of Rest and Relaxation and Sally Rooney. Booklist starred review calls it radiant, and I could not agree more. Next slide. All Girls by Emily Layden is a debut novel set at a New England all-girls boarding school where it explores coming of age, class gradations, and the desire for belonging. At a school that prides itself as a haven for progressive thinking and feminist intellectuals, students return for the fall semester to find out an alumna has made sexual misconduct allegations against an unidentified teacher. Over the course of the academic year, these extraordinary young women come to realize that the adults in their lives may not be the protectors they previously believed. The author herself has taught at several boarding and girls' schools, so she's intimately familiar with this world of young women coming to terms with the world they've inherited. We think this will be great for readers of Taylor Jenkins Reid, J. Courtney Sullivan, and Curtis Sittenfeld. Next slide. Meet Me in Bombay by Jenny Ashcroft follows 2 lovers who meet in Bombay but are soon torn apart by World War I, with only the promise they'll meet in Bombay again to sustain them. Set during the historic opulence of pre-World War I India, the lush descriptions are a sensory feast for any reader who craves a heart-melting love story, while World War I stories are on the rise after the huge success of that movie 1917. Hand this one to fans of Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and Karen White. Next slide. The Book Collectors, a band of Syrian rebels and the stories that carried them through a war by Delphine Minwy. Under siege for years, with its residents eventually suffering forced displacement, the ancient Syrian city of Daria held a remarkable secret. Residents searching for survivors after a bombing discovered a motherlode of books and began to collect more, within a month housing 15,000 volumes in a secret library where young men gathered to read, talk, and dream of a better future. In 2015, award-winning French-Iranian journalist Minwy learned of the library and interviewed one of its founders over online chats. As you can see, Nancy Pearl is already a fan, plus a Kierkegaard review calls it heartbreaking, inspiring, and beautifully told. This is a book that really shows the power of reading. Next slide. The Lost Manuscript by Kathy Bonadon is ultimately a love letter to books and reading. Set in France, we follow a woman in search of something to read while vacationing who finds an unfinished manuscript in the bedside table of her hotel room. This discovery launches her on an adventure to find the author and ultimately exchanging letters with everyone who have also been touched by this book. If you're searching for an uplifting story, look no further. This is a celebration of human connection and how one event can bring strangers together to become as close as family. It's a heartwarming story about the magic of books, forgiveness and heartbreak, tragedy and love that will be great for fans of Nina George and the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society. Next slide. Of Women in Salt by Gabriela Garcia is a debut from the daughter of Mexican and Cuban immigrants. In present-day Miami, the novel follows a daughter of immigrants struggling with addiction who is determined to learn more about her family history from her reticent mother and makes the snap decision to take in the daughter of a neighbor detained by ICE. She travels to Cuba to see her grandmother and reckon with secrets from the past destined to erupt. This is a haunting meditation on the choices of mothers, the legacy of the memories they carry, and the tenacity of women to choose to tell their stories despite those who wish to silence them. This is more than a diaspora story. It is a story of America's most tangled, honest human roots. And just a warning, it is a tearjerker. Next slide. 1, 2, 3 by Lori Frankel. You'll hopefully recognize her as the author of the Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine book club pick, This Is How It Always Is. Now she comes to us with a new novel for readers of Barbara Kingsolver, Leanne Moriarty, and Richard Russo about how to let go of the past when the past won't let go of you. We meet teenage triplets. One is the smartest person you'll ever meet. Don't let the wheelchair or voice app fool you. The next is the town's purveyor of books now that the library is closed. Tell her what you like, and she'll pull out the perfect read from the microwave or from behind the couch. And the last has one job. Get good grades, get into college, get out of the small town. And then everything changes when a new kid moves into town. Expect both laughs and tears with this one. Next slide. And that is it from us. I hope you'll check us out online and social media for even more great books. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, our final presenter will be Chelsea Good. Chelsea is an associate marketing manager at Penguin Random House. After college, she attended the Columbia Publishing course to learn more about the industry and meet people who share her love of books. Her favorite library memory is spending summer afternoons at the local library with her brother, and she's thrilled to be working with librarians today. Bring us home, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today with you to share some of our fantastic book club picks. Before we get started, I just wanted to see the key on the screen that gives you a breakdown of those abbreviations so you know what each title will have, it will be coming out in what format. Next slide. Before I dive into the books, I wanted to mention all of our incredible book club resources you can find on our issue page, from our book club brochures featuring our recommendations for book clubs to book club kits that are for more specific titles. Next slide. And you can find even more resources on our issue page, like our brand new summer reading sampler, audiobook handouts, reading challenge titles, and much, much more. Next slide. And then for those of you who have not joined us for our morning book buzz, we invite you to tune into our next episode tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, where our team will be chatting about the latest books that you need to know. You can also check out our YouTube page to catch up on the episodes you may have missed. And this webinar series started as a way to connect with you all during the pandemic, and it has just been such a joy to do, and I really hope that you all join us tomorrow and in the future. Next slide. On to the books. First up, we have Betty, a stunning lyrical novel set in the rolling foothills of the Appalachians about a young girl and the family truths that will haunt her for the rest of her life. Born in a bathtub in 1954 to a white mother and a Cherokee father, Betty Carpenter is the sixth of 8 siblings. The world they inhabit in a rural town in Ohio is one of poverty and violence, both from outside the family and from within. When Betty's family's darkest secrets are brought to light, she has no choice but to reckon with the brutal history. And so she discovers an escape. She begins to write. She recounts the horrors of her family's past and present with pen and paper and buries them deep in the dirt. Moments that have stung her so deeply she could not tell them until now. Inspired by generations of her own family, Tiffany McDaniel sets out to free the past by delivering this heartbreaking yet magical story, a remarkable novel that establishes her as one of the most important voices in American fiction. And in the Starred Review Booklist called Betty an epic lyrical coming-of-age tale, and says young adults will be soothed by the heroine's wisdom and grit at every turn. This book is perfect for fans of Where the Crawdads Sing, To Kill a Mockingbird, and Idaho. Next slide. From debut author Asha Lemmy, 50 Words for Rain is a sweeping, heart-rending coming-of-age novel about a young woman's quest for acceptance in post-World War II Japan. The child of a married Japanese aristocrat and her African-American GI lover, Nori is an outsider from birth. Though her grandparents take her in, they do so only to conceal her, fearful of a stain on the royal pedigree that they are so desperate to uphold in a changing Japan. Obedient to a fault, Nori accepts her solitary life for what it is, despite her natural intellect and nagging curiosity about what lies outside the attic's walls. But when chance brings her legitimate older half-brother Akira to the estate that is his inheritance and destiny, Nori finds in him an unlikely ally, and the siblings form a powerful bond, a bond their formidable grandparents cannot allow, and that will change their lives they were always meant to lead. Spanning decades and continents, 50 Words for Rain is a dazzling epic about the ties that bind, the ties that give you strength, and what it means to try to break free. Next slide. Soon to be a Netflix original series, The Lying Life of Adults is a powerful new novel set in a divided Naples by Elena Ferrante, the best-selling author of the Neapolitan series. Giovanna is searching for who she is in 2 kindred cities that fear and detest one another. A Naples of the Heights, which assumes a mask of refinement, and a Naples of the Depths, a place of excess and vulgarity. She moves between both in search of a truth, but neither city seems to offer answers or escape. The audiobook of The Lying Life of Adults is the perfect way to sit back and travel to Italy, with a beloved actress as your narrator guide. Casting for this eagerly awaited audiobook will be announced shortly, so check booksoontape.com for the announcement and a first audio clip very soon. Next slide. Ya Jesse's stunning follow-up to her acclaimed national bestseller, Homegoing, is a powerful, raw, intimate, deeply layered novel about a Ghanaian family in Alabama. Gifty is a 6th-year PhD candidate in neuroscience, studying reward-seeking behavior in mice and the neural circuits of depression and addiction. Her brother Nana was a gifted high school athlete who died of a heroin overdose after an ankle injury left him hooked on oxy, and her suicidal mother is living in her bed. Gifty is determined to discover the scientific basis for the suffering she sees all around her. But even as she turns to the hard sciences to unlock the mystery of her family's loss, she finds herself hungering for her childhood faith and grappling with the evangelical church in which she was raised, whose promise of salvation remains as tantalizing as it is elusive. Transcendent Kingdom is a deeply moving portrait of a family of Ghanaian immigrants ravaged by depression, addiction, and grief. A novel about faith, science, religion, and love. Exquisitely written, emotionally searing, this is an exceptionally powerful follow-up to Jesse's phenomenal debut. And this is perfect for readers of Jessamine Ward, Toni Morrison, Celeste Ng, and Colson Whitehead. Next slide. Brittany Barnett was only a law student when she came across the case that would change her life forever. that of Sharonda Jones, single mother, business owner, African-American daughter of the rural South, and victim of America's devastating war on drugs. Sharonda had been torn away from her young daughter and was serving a life sentence without parole for a first-time drug offense. In Sharonda, Barnett saw haunting echoes of her own life, both as the daughter of a formerly incarcerated mother and the once girlfriend of an abusive drug dealer. And as she studied Sharonda's case, two systems slowly came into focus, that of widespread racial injustice and mass incarceration. Moved by Sharonda's plight, Barnett set to work on gaining her freedom. Brittany Barnett is an attorney dedicated to transforming the criminal justice system and was named one of America's most outstanding young lawyers by the American Bar Association. A Knock at Midnight is an inspirational story for readers of memoirs, coming-of-age stories, and those interested in social justice. Next is Bestiary, a remarkable debut novel that was recently longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. For readers of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous and Sour Heart, this spellbinding novel tells the story of 3 generations of Taiwanese American women who are haunted by the myth of their homeland. One evening, mother tells daughter a story about a tiger spirit who lived in a woman's body. Soon afterward, daughter awakens with a tiger tail. And more mysterious events follow. Holes in the backyard spit up letters penned by her grandmother. A visiting aunt arrives with snakes in her belly. All the while, daughter is falling for Ben, a neighborhood girl with strange powers of her own. As the 2 young lovers translate the grandmother's letters, daughter begins to understand that each woman in her family embodies a myth, and that she will have to bring her family's secrets to light in order to change their destiny. Tracing one family's history from Taiwan to America, from Arkansas to California, Bestiary is a novel of migration, queer lineages, and girlhood. Next slide. All Stirred Up by Brianne Moore is a touching, modern romantic comedy debut from Alcove Press, a new imprint dedicated to publishing book club fiction that explores family, friendship, and community. With moving portrayals of second chance love and a delicious foodie flair, this modern retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion proves that the past has a way of catching up with us, no matter how hard we try to avoid it. Susan Napier's family once lived on the success of a high-end restaurant founded by her late grandfather. But bad luck and worse management has brought the business to the edge of financial ruin. Now it's up to Susan to save the last remaining restaurant, Elliot's, the flagship in Edinburgh. But what awaits Susan is more than she bargained for. Chris Baker, her grandfather's former protege and her ex-boyfriend, is also heading to the Scottish capital. And although the storms have cleared after their intense and rocky breakup, Susan and Chris are redrawn into each other's orbit, and their simmering attraction inevitably boils over. Publishers Weekly says this chaste love story, peppered with just the right amount of family drama, foodie descriptions, and rom-com hijinks, is a treat. The best-selling author of My Sunshine Away returns with another instant Southern classic, a gripping and heartfelt novel about a mysterious machine that upends a small Louisiana town. The Big Door Prize asks the question, what would you do if you knew your life's potential? And that's the question facing the residents of Deerfield, Louisiana, when the Dynamix machine appears in their local grocery store. With just a quick swab of your cheek and $2, the device claims to use the science of DNA to tell you your life's potential. With enough credibility to make the townspeople curious, soon the former teachers, nurses, and shopkeepers are abruptly changing course to pursue their destinies as magicians, cowboys, and athletes. People who believed they were perfectly happy until they realized they could dream for more. The Big Door Prize sparkles with keen observations about what it might mean to stay true to oneself while honoring the bonds of marriage, friendship, and community, and how the glimmer of possibility can pull these bonds apart, bring them back together, and make second chances possible, even under the strangest of circumstances. Next up, The Land, a story of violence at the heart of a pastoral landscape, from the author of Indie Next Pick and All Iowa Reads selection, Little Wolves. Recovering from a terrible auto accident, college dropout and hobbyist computer game programmer, Lucian Swanson becomes the caretaker of a house in northern Minnesota. Shortly after moving in, Lucian sets out to find a woman with whom he had an affair, who vanished along with the money stolen from the bank where they had worked together. His search will take him to Rose of Sharon, a white supremacist church deep in the wilderness, where a cabal of outcasts await the end of the world at a place they call The Land. At once a mystery and spiritual noir, the land explores the dark side of belief, white supremacy in the heartland, the uniquely American obsession with end times, and the sacrifices we make for those we love. A witty and profound story about family in all its strange forms, Memorial is the debut novel from rising literary star Brian Washington. Benson and Mike are two young guys who live together in Houston. Mike is a Japanese-American chef at a Mexican restaurant, and Benson's a black daycare teacher. And they've been together for a few years, good years, but now they're not sure why they're still a couple. But when Mike finds out his estranged father is dying in Osaka, just as his mother Mitsuko arrives in Texas for a visit, Mike picks up and flies across the world to say goodbye. In Japan, he undergoes an extraordinary transformation, discovering the truth about his family and his past. Back home, Mitsuko and Benson are stuck living together as unconventional roommates, an absurd domestic situation that ends up meaning more to each of them than they ever could have predicted. Recommended for readers of The Mothers and White Teeth, Memorial has already garnered star reviews and has received blurbs from the likes of Jacqueline Woodson, Tommy Orange, and Kylie Reed. And finally, a book perfect for readers of humorous, female-focused novels like Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine and The Summer Before the War. Miss Benson's Beetle is the new novel from the best-selling author of The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, and an uplifting, irresistible novel about two very different women on a life-changing adventure where they must risk everything, break all the rules, and discover their best selves together. It's 1950. London is still reeling from World War II, and Marjorie Benson, a schoolmarm spinster, is trying to get through life. One day, she reaches her breaking point, abandoning her job to set out on an expedition to the other side of the world in search of her childhood obsession, an insect that may or may not exist, the golden beetle of New Caledonia. When she advertises for an assistant to accompany her, the woman she ends up with is the last person she had in mind. Fun-loving Enid Pretty, in her tight-fitting pink suit and pom-pom sandals, seems to attract trouble wherever she goes. But together, these two British ladies find themselves drawn into a cross-ocean adventure that exceeds all expectation and delivers something neither of them expected to find: the transformative power of friendship. Rachel Joyce has been beloved by readers for her ability to write heartwarming, uplifting love stories, and here she tackles another great love story, female friendship, something so many book clubs will love to sink their teeth into. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Chelsea, and a big thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, the title list, the certificate of completion, and a video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, such as these. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. Did you know Booklist content is currently freely available to all? Start reading with our digital edition, a format that pairs the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. Interested in subscribing? Take advantage of this special webinar offer to get print, online, digital, and archive access to Booklist for only $99. And don't forget, Booklist's Guide to Graphic Novels and Libraries, a special supplement issue featuring author interviews, extensive book recommendations, contributions from your fellow librarians, and more, is currently available for free on the site. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. One more thank you to our sponsors, Bloomsbury, Penguin Random House, Macmillan Library, and HarperCollins. This concludes today's webinar.